We were told just before Christmas last year that we had a budget settlement for half of Devon and Somerset's income of X amount, which was much less than we'd had before. 3 years ago, the coalition government had come in and said, we're in deep financial poo-poo, we need to save a lot of money, and we're going to take 25% out of the government support element for the fire budgets. But we're going to do that not straight away. We'll give you notice and we'll backload it to give fire services time to adjust, to prepare for change. The alternative approach for gathering money from a Devon and Somerset perspective would be to ask for more money from the local people. But the government stepped in and said, no, you can't do that either, it's not allowed, you could only get a maximum of 2% through that route. So we were really, really tightly tied down financially. We've had inflation running away, probably 10-12% over the last 5 years, and we've got some things that are outside of our control, particularly national pay agreements. The government have been very clever in passing responsibility for managing with less money to local people. It's over to you. It's a decentralising period in England. It's very much about, it's your choice, you can do what you want. However, they've set the financial envelope, but it's up for us to manage within it. And doing that within the principles that I'll describe has been very, very challenging. I've been taking staff and councillors and the public that are interested on a journey for the last few months about why are we doing this in the fire service and what could we do. And that journey for me has started every time with the Second World War, which was when the fire service in England that we see today was effectively born. Through the Second World War, that's St Paul's during the Blitz, the fire service was nationally organised in 2 tiers. We had effectively full-time cover through a national fire service and volunteer cover through an auxiliary fire service spread across the country. The main concern was property. I think life was much cheaper back in the wartime periods, but the country needed its infrastructure to be protected to be able to recover from those times. So the focus on standards and the provision of public services was very much about property protection. We had national arrangements for fire cover, we had national arrangements for fire engines, we had national arrangements for how we provided people on fire engines. And that really stemmed from the 1947 Fire Rescue Fire Services Act and the way that things were done back in those days. The fire cover arrangements were founded right back in the 1930s by the Riverdale Committee, who divided the country up and suggested that there were 4 or 5 tiers of how we should approach fire cover. And the cities with the densely populated buildings needed X number of fire engines with X amount of kit in X number of minutes, and that cascaded through. So everywhere was compartmentalised for fire cover based on the density of the buildings and the distribution of risk from that perspective. Nothing about the people. The 1995 government review in the line of fire proposed something different, started talking about life risk and about a new way of providing a spread of protecting people in a different way. And the 2004 Fire and Rescue Services Act introduced a new mechanism requiring services through a national framework document to have an integrated risk management plan. For the first time, properly recognising that the fire service is bigger than responding to buildings. It's about preventing fires, protecting people from fires, and responding where necessary, and integrating those 3 elements. A time I think has been a massive opportunity and a huge step forward. During the period of my career, 35 years, I've been pleased to see quite a dramatic drop in demand on the fire service. The number of fire deaths, the number of incidents have all had a positive direction of travel, apart from calls to false alarms that have gone dramatically the other way, but certainly the number of fires and deaths over the last 10 years has taken a real positive turn. Locally, in Devon and Somerset, we've been quite radical already. We brought together two services. We are still the only service in the country that's formed due to a voluntary combination. Scotland have gone from 8 to 1, but by Act of Parliament, indeed, of the politicians. We in Devon and Somerset, nearly 10 years ago, got round a table and said, if we're going to prepare for the future, we need to do something quite dramatically different, and we'll only be able to survive if we get bigger. And that was both Devon and Somerset. So we drove up our own combination, very challenging politically. The piece of legislation that went through Parliament was written by fire officers, because the government department had not dealt with that before. We prompted and helped them even to that detail. Our agenda was about preparing for the future and giving us the capacity to change, to deal with the change that was coming. But we also saved £2 million a year. The budget last year for Devon and Somerset was about £75 million. It would have cost £2 million more if we'd not done the combination. We devised a relatively simple strategy. We articulated 3 key moves to ensure that we would be travelling in the right direction. Next, please. And we had 3 basic underpinning principles. I've been taught a little bit, you probably don't recognise it now, but at the Fire Service College they talk to you about how you put yourself across in press interviews, etc. Well, actually, there's always a basic rule. If you keep things simple, it's usually best, isn't it? And we try to whittle everything down to just 3 key threads so that you can get that message across and people might remember it. So, improving public safety, improving firefighter safety, and taking people with us became our mantra and our strapline. We'll be judged over time against that, but that's what we intended to do.